Okay. Let's see.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey,
How are you?
how's it going?
Good.
Doing well.
This is the first time I have ever done this. So this is Nicole, who
Hi.
you've never met, right?
We have not met. So good
No,
to meet you.
pleasure to meet you too.
I love The Office. I don't think I've seen it in geez, over a year now, right?
That's right. But I put all the toys. I don't know if you can see the
We
toys.
have
We have
lots
the
of toys
toys
here.
because
Ah,
we
There
have
we
the
go.
full effect of the
I
office.
actually I took a page out of your book. I also have my toys surrounding me all around the desk here. So it's
That's
good.
how it goes. That needs to we speak. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
Ah, all right. So, you ready to start?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, I'm David Legere of Woodhull Press, and you're tuned in to Publish This Over Lunch. I'm joined today by Gina Barreca and Nicole Caterino, editors of the upcoming Fast Funny Women, on sale October 2020, wherever books are sold. Now here comes the bios. Gina is the author of 10 books, including If You Lean In, Will Men Just Look Down Your Blouse? It's Not That I'm Bitter, Babes in Boyland, A Personal History of Coeducation in the Ivy League, and the best-selling They Used to Call Me Snow White, But I Drifted. Hailed as smart and funny by people, Gina was deemed a feminist humor maven by Ms. Her weekly columns are distributed by the Tribune Company, and she's written for most major publications, including the New York Times, the Chronicle of Higher Education, Cosmopolitan, and the Harvard Business Review. For more information, visit her at ginabarreca.com. Nicole Caterino is a sophomore English major with a concentration in creative writing at the University of Connecticut. Fast Funny Women is the first publication of her writing. All right, Gina, Nicole, would you tell us what Fast Funny Women is about and what drew you to this project?
Take it away.
Okay. Well, David, Dave, it was really your idea. What drew me to this project was talking to you about the series of books that Woodhull Press has done about flash fiction and flash funny nonfiction. And we were discussing the idea because I had the good fortune to be in the flash funny nonfiction, right?
Yes.
So that came out years ago, I think.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
and it was a terrific collection. And the idea of putting the best writers that I knew, the women who have been all the women writers that I knew, the best women writers that I knew, in one place. So to line up, what was particularly interesting for me was the idea of lining up the prominent women writers. Faye Weldon, who I think we read in your class, Dave.
We did.
Right?
We did.
Who is, has she's a dame of the British Empire. So she can, as she discusses in her essay, she actually has the right to wear a sword in the presence of the Queen. I've gotten a bunch of, I have a bunch of awards that I've gotten, but I cannot sadly wear a sword in the presence. I'm looking forward to that. I really am. And Marge Piercy, oh, you have sword?
I actually have a sword. That's funny.
You never, which I'm grateful. That was never part of, you don't travel with those. The TSA doesn't like those, right? That's not part of what you do. And he's really a very nice man. To the people who are watching this is really, exactly. But it's nice. The ferocity is there. But I wanted to have a place where, so Faye Weldon, Marge Piercy, who is one of the greatest American poets in the world. I, again, grew up reading Marge Piercy when I started writing about women and humor and ferocity. I was teaching Marge Piercy's poems. I was teaching her novels. She's a New York Times bestseller. She's in the Academy of American Poets. She is great. And Marge Piercy agreed to write, this is women who are writing new material just for this book. So Marge Piercy is there. Judge Judy is there. Judge Judy, Nicole was quite delighted by that idea. Judge Judy, my neighbor, as you know, Dave, we had Judge Judy sign a picture for you and one for your mom because you said your mom was a fan. How could you not be a fan of Judge Judy? He wrote about growing up again, my next door neighbor when I was a kid. So she's in there. We have Dawn Lundy Martin, who is also part of the Academy of American Poets. She was a former student. She was a student. She directs the creative writing program and the Black American Writers Program at the University of Pittsburgh. I think I'm getting that right. She is, again, a star, and but she was one of my undergraduates here at the University of Connecticut when I first started teaching. We've got Susan Shapiro. We've got Pamela Katz, who's a screenwriter who wrote the Hannah Arendt movie. So we have there Liza Donnelly, who's a cartoonist for The New Yorker and a writer of about feminist humor. Mimi Pond, whose graphic novel Over Easy was a New York Times bestseller. And we have about 30 people who have never, like Nicole, who are publishing their first pieces, their first major pieces of humor in this collection. So we've got the women who are most powerful and known in women's humor up against the women who will be known for the next generation. And it's an eclectic, Darian Hughes. I mean, we have a woman writing about being a middle-aged Asian woman and what she goes through. I mean, there's genuine diversity, and we didn't have to. Nicole has helped me through the entire process. She's somebody who works with me in the office as a student assistant, and has done the heavy lifting through the whole thing, and I'll let her talk about what that was like for her. But the collection is astonishing. I didn't know it would be, when you and I were talking about it, Dave, when you came into the office. I didn't know it was going to be this amazing, and that almost everybody I approached, all of these prominent writers and then all of these other sort of upcoming writers were nervous because they were like, I'm going to be in the company of these people. And they wrote some of the funniest stuff. So it's a great amalgam. So Nicole, what was it like for you to be part of this as somebody starting out?
Honestly, it was a whirlwind, because it was just one of those things where, like, amongst getting hired and then starting my first year at UConn, it was like, oh, welcome to the project. You're now going to be one of the main editors for this. And I was like, okay, I've never done this before. Let's just get it. And then, of course, Gina was like, I want you to write for it as well. So that was a whole new experience too, just putting my own writing out there. Honestly, it was some of the most fun and at the same time the most stressful thing I've ever done, but more fun.
And that's what any kind of writing process is, or editing process. I mean, I've edited, 12 books or 17, depending on how you count them. And so while it's my name as the editor, again, Nicole did much of the work on getting the manuscript together, on making sure everybody's stuff was in on time. When you have 75 moving parts, 70 busy women. We have Patty Russo, who's head of the Yale Campaign School for Women. We have Leanne Lord, who's an amazing stand-up comic who, is on the road all the time. She has her own podcast. She's doing everything. So Leanne is in there. We have to get pictures from everybody. We got bios from everybody. And it's really hard. It's like, some people are like, I don't want to write a bio. I was like, get over it, right? And then people are writing bios of 300 words because they want to thank their relatives. I was like, this is not an Oscar. You can't thank your relatives in your bio. Just tell people where they can find your work, what you're doing. So a lot of former students, again, a lot of younger writers, a lot of writers who are emerging, but who are actually, over 50. So, and from all over the country. We've got journalists from the UK who are in it, Juliet Ricks, who wrote a wonderful children's book. We've got, again, people who are coming at it from all angles. Some of them are political. Susan Campbell, who's a journalist and a columnist, wrote something about how she has, during the most recent administration, binge watched West Wing and what her life has been. And Nicole Hollander, one of the great cartoonists, again, everybody knows Nicole from her cartoon Sylvia, the Sylvia cartoons, which were syndicated across the country for years. And here's is part of show that's coming out at, I think it's one of the big museums in Chicago next year that's celebrating her work. And Nicole wrote about how she was binging on Ozark and deliberately told her sister the ending because she was mad at her sister. So it's talking about that. Stuff about tampons, losing them, finding them, needing them. So there's some stuff, but there's also stuff about being Black in America by Nyanka Kissy, who is, again, a former student who went to Medgar Evers School in Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn, a different part of Brooklyn, and who now has her master's degree and is working in the city, who just got married. And she talks about her mother as an eater of men, right? So and it's funny, but it gets you in the throat. So this is something that you could, one of the nice things about 750 words as the limit, and some of them are fewer words than that, but most of them are around 750, is that it forces the writers to get to the heart of the matter immediately, and they do. So you can read this before bed, while doing something else. You can read it when you're upset. You can read it to make you happy. You can read it to offer perspective. It is the perfect gift book for any woman that you know is funny, and for any man who needs to know what women are really thinking. It will be illuminating, shall we speak.
So, I also have to give Nicole extra thanks, because I've worked on a lot of these books over these collections, and especially with all these moving pieces. This process was seamless, knock on wood, and I very rarely have come across that. There's always hiccups. There's always little issues, and it started seamlessly even when I just went to Gina's office. When I had this idea, right? I just was like, you know what? I would love to do something that makes the world happy, right? There's a lot of negativity. Wanted something that would make people laugh. And I thought, you immediately thought of Gina, because I remember as an undergrad, her class, right, with everybody, all the students who are even watching right now, she's just so inspirational and funny, and captures that sense of humor in the classroom and in life. And humor being funny, right? It's being thought of as a funny person. What does that even mean to you, right? And as a humorist, how does that, what's the line between funny and not funny, right? Like, how do you define it so well?
I really think that any good humor, and especially, my ideas about the difference between men and women's humor, which I've been writing about for 30 years, is that women don't tell jokes. Women tell stories. If you go up to a woman and she says, I got something funny to tell you, if you're smart, you'll sit down, because you're going to be there a long, long time. Right? The guy says, I tell you, he's going to say, two blondes walk into a bar with a Dalmatian. I mean, you got bada bing, bada boom, you're done. A woman says, I got something to tell you. She's going to explain something that happened to her in her life, because our lives are a riot. And too often, what we read, what we see represented in the media are not those things that actually make us laugh. We walk into the ladies' room, we walk into the office, we sit down and go, okay, I was driving on 95 and I thought I need a cup of coffee. But then I'm thinking, okay, but I'm taking estrogen, and you're not supposed to have caffeine when you're taking estrogen, and I'm taking estrogen through a patch, and they should write something on those patches that have like song in my heart, and other women are coming up going, you shouldn't have decaf. It's almost the same. And other women are coming going, have half decaf, half calf, because you need it. Caffeine is your last drug. It's your last bite. Other women are coming over going, I have coupons from Starbucks. I have coupons. My niece works there. She gave me, I only drink green tea. It cleanses. Meanwhile, some nice man is sitting there going, I thought you said there was something funny. What's funny? Women are laughing hysterically. And men are sitting there going, I'm waiting for the funny. There was a funny. You said there was a funny part, right? And more women are coming over, and we're laughing. And so the pieces that are in the book are these stories. But they're only limited to 750 words. So it's okay. It's short. But what I consider funny is something that tells the truth. The funny parts in life. And this really does go back to Aristotle. And this goes back to Aristotle. And this goes back to Lysistrata. I mean, this is not like a new piece of information, right? Is that it tells the truth. Real humor deals with real stuff in life. And that's why real humor, whether it's spoken, it's written, it's from the stage, it's performed, gets to those taboo topics. Real humor deals with money, with sex, with death, with disease, with depression, with loneliness. It gets to those topics that we worry about in life and that are often not, under discussion because people consider them too dangerous. They're flammable. But humor comes in and sets them on fire, and it actually illuminates, that fire illuminates everything. And so you get to look in the dark corners of our lives, and what you see is not everybody miserable or angry. You see that everybody's laughing. Even those people you didn't think would laugh with you are actually laughing. And you have an enormous sense of community. And that's what I think the book does too, is to give us a sense of community. There will be it's like a guarantee I want to offer. There will be at least 15 essays in this book that everybody, however wildly different their lives are, will get something out of, because it will touch something where you're going to say, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. And somebody in that book will have written an essay that you think nobody else could have done except for you. And it'll make you feel part of a gang, part of a tribe, part of a group of insurgents in the world that are actually having a good.
So, what I love about this idea of communities, because that's what books like this are about, right? They're bringing together writers of all ages, all backgrounds, to come together and share in something. In this case, it's laughter. So it's that idea of all ages that I'm curious about. So, what would you say, right? If you could have a conversation with your younger self right now, what would you tell yourself? And maybe, what would you say?
Sorry, Nicole's the youngest writer in the book. And the oldest writer is 87.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of, so Nicole, even you, however, have things you'd like to say to your younger self. It's hard to imagine her as a younger self.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I'm only 20, so there's not much time between. I mean, I've only been around for 2 days, but even so, oh my gosh, I would love to talk to my 16, 17-year-old self, because I don't even want to tell her anything, because I know she just needs somebody to talk to. All I know it's so sad, but it's so funny.
No, that's
so
true.
All I needed when I was in high school was just somebody to talk to, because I feel like everyone goes through that span in high school where you think you are the only person in the entire world going through what you're going through, and you're never going to make it on the other side, or if you do make it, you're not going to be the same. And even for, it can get as dark as depression, or even just as light as just I don't think I'm going to survive these AP classes. And all I really needed was just somebody who I could relate to, or somebody who knew that what you're going through is normal, you're okay, everything's going to be fine. And honestly, when I was 16 or 17, I wrote the most. I haven't had a burst of creativity that strong since I was about 16 or 17. So honestly, if I could talk to my 16 or 17-year-old self, I'd get some ideas. And I'd tell her to just keep writing, even if you think, oh, you don't have the time because your grades. God, please keep writing. Just write down some of those ideas, because you're going to lose them all by the time you're 20. I don't know what I wanted to write because I didn't write them down. But yeah, I think I would just go back to just high school only a couple years ago, and I just talk. Oh my gosh, I just
one of the things.
But I think that's what it's about, and I do think that the idea of having cross-generational, cross-cultural, cross classes. We have a lot of people who came from very different backgrounds in this book, and who understand that, and who are going back and speaking in a way to their younger selves, who are going back and looking at them. But I think the idea of feeling like you're not the only one who's going through that experience, again, is the most important part. I think I would also go back to my teenage self. I was very lonely and very sad, probably from ages, 11 to 18.
Yeah.
And that I also didn't think. I felt ugly. I felt like I never fit in. I felt I always felt too much.
Mm-hmm.
Too much. Too loud. My hair was too frizzy. My voice was like traffic. I sounded like I was from Brooklyn. I said, and now those are all the things that I feel really good about. I'm not going to try to say aunt anymore. I say aunt. And I said that in my classes. I don't know if you remember that, because I would say, I never write on the board. I always tell the students right away, I never write on the board, because I learned growing up that you never turn your back on a crowd. So I just tell them, take this down. You're going to take notes. I'll speak. You take this down. And this is, but I am not going to try to be something I'm not. Right. And I think for those teenage years, those young adult years, it was the idea that to be anybody that was acceptable, I was going to have to change everything about me and strap it down and change my face and change my hair and change my voice and change my way of thinking. And then I think once I got to college, I started to realize that it wasn't that everybody was better than I was, but that I could make my own way, and that both my tool and my weapon was going to be humor. Right. That I was going to say back to the idea of telling the truth. I was just going to repeat things that were said to me, so that, again, I was one of the earliest classes of women at Dartmouth College, which is what Babes in Boyland is about. And so I just repeated stuff, so that at Dartmouth, where we had to go in those days, women were using diaphragms for birth control. And we had to go to the health center on campus. And the health center on campus, where women were going to get our birth control, was called Dick's House. So now, I wanted to write that book as a novel, but I couldn't make up something that funny. I mean, so you have these women with, like, perfect SATs going, where are you going for your diaphragm? I'm going to Dick's House for my birth control. I mean, it was like no one had thought that was funny in 100 years. And I mean, all you have to do is repeat it back. Half the time, real satire is you just say something that's real and give it a little bit of space around it, and it's hilarious. That's the best part. You just say back to somebody, do you hear what you just said? Right. And you give it a little, so it's perspective. So I would say that real humor comes from perspective. Right. And I think that goes back to the question that you asked, Dave, about, what version of yourself would you go back to? That the younger versions, especially about when you are unnerved as a kid and you don't know what this sort of conventional femininity is like, and you think that that's the script you have to follow, that you have to realize that you get rid of all of that. Right. Because that's putting you in some kind of, it's worse than a corset or a girdle. It's sort of strapping in your head. And so you have to and when we're allowed to do that, and I think, by the way, that the straitjacket of masculinity is as confining as the straitjacket of femininity. You guys have your own issues. I understand that. So, and I understand that we're speaking from a position of privilege, and we can check off all the boxes. But having said that, it's perspective, right? And that look at how absurd the world is, and you get to say it back. Then the world starts to laugh at itself. And if it laughs at itself and it sees the ridiculousness of it, then there are actual little changes that can happen because of that. It'll understand even the systems and the structures and institutions, they can be overturned. Mark Twain said that against the tyranny of laughter, nothing can stand. Right. Because laughter so effective. It's such a great line.
I love that.
Yeah.
And something that's a good writing prompt in the classroom that kind of feeds off this is ask students to have a conversation with their 10-year-old self, and with their 10-year-old self think they're cool. Yeah. And it's like this idea, are you where you thought you were going to be at 10 years old? Are you going after those dreams? Are you following through? And it's kind of an interesting, usually there's this this kind of aha moment on faces. So it's having that conversation with your younger self. But so now that you've gone through this process of writing and career, how do you define literary success, right? You've built this career out of writing. What's the definition for you?
There is no definition. Boy,
bringing a sword to meet the queen, I think, is my peak literary success, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know if it's it's only for British citizens, but you can always.
I'm gonna get there.
We should all get a different. We should all get another way. I feel very lucky to be able to write and to find that people will respond to the writing. That's a great good fortune. I feel enormously privileged to be able to do that. I don't take it for granted. Even in the introduction, we were talking about being a columnist. I've been furloughed, as everybody's had to deal with this COVID stuff. So the Hartford Courant and therefore the Tribune has put me on a hiatus. So I'm waiting to come back. But meanwhile, I've been writing for Psychology Today. I've been writing for myself. I'm putting together this book on loneliness and creativity and how that works, because I think it's a big topic, and I'd like to give, because I think that humor comes out of a lot of this, right? That humor comes out of needing to get to, again, those most intense places, right, the dangerous places. That humor is made by most people who consider themselves outsiders or outliers. That if humor works, if you're uncomfortable, it should make you comfortable. And if you're comfortable, it should make you uncomfortable. Right. And all good writing should do that. That's what that I think would be. I don't know, Dave, if you remember the exercises from the creative writing class that you were in, but the last thing that I always make people write is that letter to your later self.
I use that. I use that in the classroom. It's one of the most beneficial things I've ever done as a writer. I love that exercise.
And it's so interesting to hear what people think about themselves, right? First of all, everybody, not for nothing, but everybody who's 22 thinks they're going to be dead by 45. That's why nobody, right? Everybody's like, nah, I'm going to check out. It's like, no, honey, you're not, which is why you need to vote for elder care. Right? Why? Not going to live fast. I'm going to leave a beautiful course. Not if you're lucky. Right. You're going to actually have a life where at some point you want to get the state-funded surgery for when you need a toe removed. Not that I'm speaking from personal experience. It's really, you want somebody to kick. So that to understand that your later self is actually wanting to look after you, just as Nicole's experience. And you were, Nicole, you found it interesting. I just want to mention this and thinking about time, but one of the things that I think was interesting for you and going back and in the writing process, looking over everything that you wrote, you were even in the brief period of time between writing it and doing the final edits when the final pages, the proof pages came in. Nicole was like, I want to change everything.
So
and I
much.
was like, you can't change, because that's writing, right? Is that you want to somehow in page proof, you then see everything that you would change. Right. And so the successful, you want to know what a successful writer is somebody who can let it go once it's out the door. It's like, I think like an adult child or something. It's like, honey, I did my bit, and now you have to cross the street by yourself. So you have to cross the street by yourself, and it's hilarious, and you have to let it go, and then make sure, it looks both ways, and it makes it to the other side of the street, which is to the reader who will appreciate it.
I love that. All right. Lastly, 3 things I ask. 1, coffee or tea? There's a hard line on this, and I'm just always curious. I drink a ton of coffee mostly.
Person. I don't do coffee. I'm 100% a tea person.
Tea?
I'll just
All right.
a good cup of Earl Grey.
See, and this is why go meet the queen. It's really, absolutely. I could see you're doing that, and I'm coffee. It took me time over my lifetime. I now drink it black. I used to do the half and half. I used to do the sugar. I used to do that. And now just get me. And again, when I invite the students in, or if I meet somebody for coffee, it's like black coffee, flavored coffee. I can't stand flavored coffee. That's something that I think sign of the disintegration of civilized society. It's like, do you want like an almond hazelnut black? No, I want it to taste like coffee. That's like putting flavored, like bubble gum flavored vodka. It's like, honey, you need that. You're not able to drink. It's like, no, take the flavors, give us what we have. So there is a hard line.
Very passionate.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm on Team Gina on this. Black coffee, it was an evolution to get to the point. Now it's just intravenous. All right. one quote, motto, song, what gets you going each day? What's your internal something? What do you got?
I quote actually that I used to write it on like every whiteboard space in my dorm. But there's a quote by Mary Oliver. It is a very serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world. And honestly, right now in quarantine, that's been what's getting me through. Just that, like, no matter how bad things are, you woke up today. You can pretty much get through anything. Like, the world is fixing itself, breaking itself over. Hopefully something good comes out of it. But like, at the very least, you're awake, you're alive, you can move through it. I just always really like that quote.
That's lovely.
I love that.
I know it's beautiful.
No.
And that's a wonderful young person.
Oh.
My inspirational song is She Works Hard for the Money.
I love that.
That's why it's good to have young people in your life and for the money. You know, that's, I'm sorry, but that gets me. I don't have a muse. I have a deadline and a paycheck.
Yeah.
That's what
That'll motivate you like nothing else.
Exactly.
Nothing
So
else.
that's the you know, that's the working writer, but that's why I need young people in my life. And we do have our mask, and we are safe, so we are doing it. It is not, but we are confident and well, and we want everybody. And we hope you seem like you're laughing, Dave, so I hope we're doing a good job.
I'm loving this conversation. This is I feel like I'm just in your office hanging out again, which is really nice. I appreciate it.
No.
And lastly, just one piece of advice, tip for everybody listening. What do you think? What's your takeaway?
My thing is that you really, as Nicole suggested when she was talking to her younger self, you have to write everything down because otherwise it will go away. Yeah. It is not, no book, no poem, no piece of work, no comedy routine ever came from a big idea. Right. It came from overheard conversation. It came from one particular feeling. It came from something you saw, and you have to get it down. It won't be like, I'll remember this later. You have to capture it. Right. Like you have, and you can't let it go. And it has to be that particular thing. So it's not the feeling, right, that you want to get some large expression of. You have to go, I was alone in that room and the blinds were closed and I didn't know how I was going to make it through the rest of the day, as opposed to some people in the world have a sense of alienation from others. That no one is going to read. Right. The idea of is like, I didn't know whether to go for a walk, have a drink, go to sleep, or throw myself out the window, but I'd have to open the blinds to do that. Whatever that is, you have to put somebody in that moment with you to make them get it. So you have to write. I have literally, as anybody who's been in my office knows, pieces of paper everywhere with tiny things written down on
them. My desk looks like too.
Yeah, and that's it. So it's capturing that thing. It's not having a big idea. Every idea starts from a couple of words. It's magic. It's alchemy.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I follow that exact same advice, and I've kind of had to learn over the years that me to just myself, like I promise the weird looks you're going to get for pulling out a pad of sticky notes or your phone or talking whatever to get that idea down is not going to matter 3 hours later when you're kicking yourself because now you can't remember now that you're in front of a computer. It's just one of those things where it's just like you just have to keep writing. It's like no matter what, even if you think you don't have any ideas, just write something down and eventually something will come.
You can always throw it away, but you can't recreate.
I love that. All right, well, be sure to check out Fast Funny Women, available October 2020 in paperback, ebook, and audiobook, being published by Tantor Media. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at david@woodhallpress.com. And thank you both, Gina and Nicole. I love this. This was great.
Us again. Come in, we'll do this again. Close the publication date.
Yeah.
All right. All right. See you guys. Bye.